All right, this lesson is on making an interactive button to start playing your animation. To start off, I just want to kind of go over how buttons are used and then also some of the settings that you would need to change. I'm going to reference you to a tutorial that I put together for you so that you can reference afterwards. And then we're going to go ahead and run through a practice file, which I also provide you with. All right, to get started, this is your button here. The button is situated on its own layer and it's only in the first frame. This is typically where you want your button so that the movie stops initially, you're able to read your title, and then you're able to click it and then start the movie, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and publish the file so you can see how this works. We're going to go File, Publish, and what that will do is it'll render an HTML file and an SWF file. You just minimize your window. Go and locate them, okay? Now they'll be on the desktop, assuming your file is on the desktop. If you have it in a folder, it'll be right next to your FLA file, wherever you have your FLA file. I'm going to go ahead and double click this one, and you'll see it pop up here, and notice the movie has stopped. If I roll over this, it gives me a hover state. If I click on it, it gives me a selected state, and then once I release it, it's going to start playing my movie. Once the movie is stopped, it'll loop back to the beginning and then they can decide to play it again if they wanted to, okay? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click off of that. And what we'll also notice is that this button here, when we see it here, it's selected and it's set to be a button. So when we right-click it here, Properties, you'll notice that it's set to be a button state, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and cancel that. The other thing you'll notice is that we have this layer called Actions, and here you'll notice there's this little, like, it almost looks like an infinity sign, like a little A or something, okay? This here contains our actions. Basically, the actions are the ones that tell the movie to stop and to continue playing to the next frame once they click on it, okay? So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say Window, Actions, okay? And that is this text here. It's telling you to stop. And then it's telling us to look for this button here. And then it says when they click on it, then go to the frame 2 and play it. Okay, that's basically what that's saying in short terms. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close out of here. Okay, the rollovers that you saw happen, I'm going to double click in here, was dictated within the button. You'll see that there's an up state, an over state, a down state, and then a hit state. Your up state is what it looks like when you first look at it. Your over state is when you hover over it. This is what it's going to change to. Your down state is when they select it. And your hit state is basically just specifying the area that's hot, that's active, that acts as a button. Okay? So that's kind of how that's put together. Now we're going to go back to the scene. Now you can create your own button from scratch just like we did, which is this button here. Or you can actually use an existing graphic such as this one and make that your button key, okay? The key is to make sure to somehow define it either by doing rollover states and including some text that maybe says start or play movie or something like that so that it's clear where they need to click to be able to activate the movie, okay? So we're going to first go through the example of how to create something like this, and then I'm going to show you also how to maybe create some existing graphic that you already have included in your movie, okay? Okay, so now that we've seen how all of this is put together, I'm going to go ahead and go into the practice file. And in this practice file, all I have here is I have the animation that basically starts and the movie starting at the beginning just in frame 1, okay? So I still have to create my button from scratch inside the symbols library, and I still have to name it, code it to do what I want it to do using action script, putting that action script inside the layers and as well as my button, okay? So to get started, what I want to do is I want to create a new symbol. I'm going to go ahead and create this symbol from scratch. I'm just going to go here to create a new symbol. It's in my libraries palette. I'm going to click on it and I'm going to call this Start Button. And I'm going to go ahead and make sure that the button type is set to button here, okay? And that's all I need to do. I just go okay. And in here I can just start drawing, and I can just draw the way I normally do. I'm going to go ahead and select my rectangle tool, and I'm just going to leave it as green, and I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to grab my text tool, and with my text tool I'm just going to write start, and I'm going to position it. If you want to change the settings for this, remember it's in your properties palette. You can go into the properties palette. You can change the kind of text that you have here, times, regular. You can change the size, font here, whatever you want it to look like. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and position it where I want it. Okay, all right. that's my upstate. This is what my button is going to look like when I start it, okay? I did it in a raw state. I could have chosen to, when I drew the rectangle, to do the object mode. It's really up to you. We're not really going to be animating this, so it's not a big deal if it is the way it is, okay? Now to go on to the overstate, what you want to do is you want to select on the overstate here, this frame. You want to right click and you want to insert a keyframe. When you insert a keyframe, it's going to copy exactly what was there before into this next state. And then you can just select it and modify anything here that you don't want. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to change this to red. And the text I'm going to change to black. All right. Now I'm going to go a downstate. I'm going to right click. I'm going to insert a keyframe, and then I'm just going to change if I want it to be different when they actually click on and are holding down on it. Then you could change this even further. I'm just going to go with a brighter color of that red, almost like a orangey color, so it's not that apparent. Okay, so it'll go from there to there. And then on hit here, we want to just also right click, insert a keyframe. And on here, you can just basically create another shape that totally covers up this shape just to set it up. It doesn't matter what color it is. I'm going to just choose black. It doesn't matter because this will not be visible. You're just designating the area that's considered what we call hot, okay, which means that it's clickable to activate the button. And now we just cover it up, okay? So this is what it looks like when it starts. When they hover over, it'll look like this. And then when they are holding it down, it'll look like this. And then this just designates the area, okay? I'm going to go back to my scene. And now I can use it, okay? So what I want to do is I want to go to my library where I can see my button. I want to create a new layer for my button, okay? And this button only needs to be visible for the first frame. So I'm just going to click there. I'm going to drag it in. I'm going to position it where I want it. Okay. And again, notice that it went all the way across because my movie's this length. What I can do is I can just select these frames and remove them, or I can shrink my timeline. I'm just going to go ahead and select there. And I've selected those. I'm just going to right click and I'm going to remove the frames, okay? So now the start button is only visible here along with my title. I'm going to name this Start Button, okay? So now I have a button. But because it's not coded to stop or anything, if I were to publish this movie, we're going to go File, Publish. You just minimize your window. Go and locate them. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and double click this one. Notice it just starts the movie. When it ends, it starts back at the beginning. It's only visible for one frame. Starts again, it just keeps looping around. So what I need to tell this button here is to basically stop at the first frame and until I click on it to continue on. That was done with that coding, okay? But before that, what we need to do is we need to name this instance of this button. So I'm going to select it on my stage. I'm going to go into the Properties palette. Here where it says Instance Name, I'm going to change it to My BTN. And notice it's lowercase m, y, and then capital B, and then TN in lowercase, okay? And it's very important because this is case sensitive. That means that if you just do like that, it's not going to show up. If you do that, it's not going to work. It's case sensitive, so make sure you do BTN. And this is the preset code that I'm going to provide you with, is going to reference this MY capital BTN. So just make sure you type it this. Don't call it Start Button. Don't call it anything else. Call it this, okay? All right. So now you've named the instance of your button. So the next step is to create a new layer called Actions. Okay. And basically the next step is to tell your button that you need it to stop at the first frame and then play once they click on it, okay? So to do that, you need to go to Window, Actions, and here's where you're going to put in your code. Now, I don't say type in your code because I don't want you typing it manually because there's too much room for error. Everything is case sensitive. This is basically scripting, coding, so to speak. And what we want is that you just copy and paste the code that I provide you with. Now, on that, I mentioned that I provide you with a tutorial. Your tutorial looks like this. I tell you how to create the button, which is basically what we've done. I show you how to name your button, which we already did. And now we're at the stage where we're going to create the action layer and do the action strip. So right here it tells you to copy and paste this code. So I just want you to select it, do Edit, Copy. You can go ahead and move this down. Go into your actions, the very first frame here, right here. And then in this actions palette, all you want to do is right click, paste, and you'll notice that it's all in there. Okay. And now everything should be fine. You'll notice that this spans the length of the movie here by default. You can choose to remove it, but it doesn't really matter. The code is pasted in this first frame, and because of this code telling it to stop at the very beginning and then not to play until they click on it, it's not going to really matter, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and just close this actions here, and I'm going to go to this movie. We're going to go File, Publish. You just minimize your window. Go and locate them, okay? I'm going to go ahead and double click this one. Now you'll notice it stopped. The rollover is working. When I click on it, it changes to a little bit slightly different orange. And when I release it, it starts playing the movie. And it loops all the way around and comes back to the beginning and it stops again, okay? And that's basically how you create a button, all right? Now, you don't have to create one from scratch the way that I did here. You don't have to draw a fully new one. You can use a graphic, as I mentioned. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of this file, and I'm just going to show you how to do it with an existing graphic. I'm going to go ahead and close it. Don't save. All right, I'm going to go ahead and open that back up. All right, so I have the practice file here. Now, let's say that I want to create this into a button, okay? That is already in my library here. It's this graphic. It's the one called Monster. Okay, but right now it's in graphic format. Now I can choose to change it right now. What I like to do personally is I like to just duplicate this. I'm going to right click it, and I'm going to say duplicate it, and I'm going to call this Monster Button, and I'm going to make sure I change this to a button, and I'm going to hit OK. All right. And this instance here, right now, I think I'm still referencing the regular graphic button. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change it, and I'm going to swap it out for the monster button, and I'm going to hit OK. Okay. So it looks the same because it's basically swapping it at the same size and everything, but it's actually the button that it's referencing now, or it should be at least. All right. So what we're going to do here is in the monster button, we're going to double click this. And we're in here, and you'll notice that on the up button, you have the drawing in here. Now, what I'm missing is that play text or something to designate this as a button so that it's clear. So I'm just going to go ahead and create some text here, and I'm going to say play, all right, or start, or whatever you want to name it. Now I'm going to go to the next state. I'm going to do right click, and I'm going to insert a keyframe. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the play button to a different color, and I'm going to do it red. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab all of this, not the play, just this part of it, and I'm going to change this to shrink. I'm just going to grab it, and I'm going to shrink it. I'm going to kind of try to position it where it was before, more or less. All right. And so then if I test it from here to here, that's what's going to change. And when they hit a down state, insert keyframe. I'm actually going to have this shrink even further. I'm going to position it around here. Okay, so it's going to go like this, and like this. All right. I am going to do another right click, insert keyframe, and when I designate my hotspot, I'm going to designate it just kind of that general area up there. Okay. All right. It doesn't matter what's on top, what's at the bottom. As long as you designate the area, it's going to go based on this space that I just created, this field, okay? All right, so now I'm going to go back into the scene, and you'll notice that it automatically, because I had changed it to swap to that button, it automatically has that. We'll look at the button here, right there. We can do the play button. You can see the stages, okay? All right, so now I'm going to create a new graphic for my button, all right? I'm going to make sure that this one, I'm going to take it out of where it's at. I'm just going to cut it, edit, cut, and then I'm going to put it on its own layer, okay? And I'm just going to do edit, paste in place. Now, I could have just used this one and renamed it, but I just decided to create a new one. You could keep the other one and just rename it. I'm going to go ahead and throw this off, okay? So now it's there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to shrink this because I only need it visible for a certain amount of time. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to remove the frames. All right. Next step, I'm going to go to Properties. I'm going to go select my monster graphic here. I'm going to make sure that it's set to button because it's apparently remembering what it was before. And then I'm going to change here BTN. All right. So that's important that it might remember what graphic is. So make sure you check that it's set to button just in case. Okay. If you're using an existing graphic like this. All right. Now we're going to go and we're going to create a new layer. Name this Actions. Window. Open up your Actions palette. Go to the tutorial. Copy the text. Go back into your Actions. Right click. Paste it. Save your file. Publish this movie. We're going to go File. Publish. You just minimize your window. Go and locate them. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and double click this one. Look at it. Should stop. It's working. When I click on it, it goes even smaller and it starts playing the movie. And then it should loop around and stop again. Okay. All right. This concludes your lesson on how to create a button. The written tutorial is linked below. Please take a look at it if you need reinforcement. If you don't understand how to do this or you want to create multiple buttons, make sure to contact me.